Hello everybody and welcome to today's video. Today I want to talk about Digimon Survive. This is a game that I have been meaning to talk about for the last week or so. It's just been a really busy time in terms of JRPG releases, with Xenoblade Chronicles 3 just launching and then also Sword and Fairy 7 last week. And unfortunately we only got our review codes for Digimon Survive on launch. So there was no preferential treatment being done as far as I'm aware. All media got the same access. It's just that was when the review codes were available. So I felt like I needed to prioritize the games that I got early access to so I could have reviews up in time for launch. As a result, I've had to put this one on the back burner a bit, but I have been playing it in the background. The long and short of it is I absolutely love this game. By the time this video goes live, I'll have a review up on digitallydownloaded.net that you can check out. And it is my favorite Digimon game. It's not that I've played all that many Digimon games, to be honest, but of the ones that I have played, this one really speaks to me and I've found it the most enjoyable by a pretty considerable margin, actually. So I didn't want to do this video to talk about why I like the game. You can check out my review for that. What I wanted to do with this video is talk through some of the controversies that have kind of cropped up with it, because it hasn't been the cleanest launch, and while it is by no means a kind of universal thing, the general sentiment about the game seems to be that it is appreciated by the fans and enjoyed. There are some people that found it quite disappointing, and I wanted to use this video to talk through that because I feel like the criticisms that this game has been attracting are probably not probably not deserving. The game doesn't deserve those kinds of criticisms. So to give you an example of some of these things that I'm talking about, there was a media headline over on Kotaku that reads, "Digimon Survive is a painfully boring tactical RPG." And that sentiment is kind of shared by a section of the community. So to read a user review over on Steam, in respect for the game, what the game is and intending to be, a dark horror story focus, I feel it is a good story game that works on prioritizing its essential components, but it is also needing to be a game, and the gameplay loop and story immersion are both lackluster for me that I can't review it highly. Basically, this user review is saying that the game wasn't what they were expecting. They are a big fan of Digimon games from way back when, but this game didn't quite deliver on that, and for that reason they were disappointed about it. And in fairness, I do see where they're coming from, both cases. Digimon Survive is a significantly different game from what other Digimon games have been, and in fact what other tactical RPGs are out there. The closest comparison I can come up with is the Utawara Ramono series, and that was a very niche series of tactical JRPG visual novel crossovers. I absolutely loved them, but they were niche for a reason. It's because you go through about an hour or so of dialogue, of kind of narrative, before you get to the next battle with those games. Anybody going into those expecting something like Fire Emblem or Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, which is relatively brief on the story side so you can get back into the action quite quickly, would have found the pacing for Utawara Ramono quite difficult to kind of get along with. And Digimon Survive is much the same experience from that perspective. To make things even worse, I guess, from their perspective with Digimon Survive, there's also a full kind of horror adventure game that's kind of built in there as well, which, funnily enough, has its closest comparison to Deathmark, which was another very niche visual novel that I really loved, and you can see why I'm kind of enjoying Digimon Survive so much, but it was again very niche for a particular reason, and in that case it was kind of a point and click adventure game where you move from room to room to investigate things and eventually come to the story, or you figure out who the monster was, and then you do a battle with that monster and then defeat it, which Digimon Survive then emulates pretty closely. Deathmark used a kind of RPG-style combat system in a way. I mean, that's the best way I can kind of summarize it in the context of this video. And Digimon Survive does it in a different way. They do the tactical battle thing to resolve those conflicts, but the core mechanics are kind of there, the same. So with Digimon Survive, you've got the visual novel element, you've got the adventure game element, and then you've got the tactical battle element on the top of that. People that went into it expecting a kind of tactics RPG would find that there's an awful lot of stuff in between those tactics RPG moments. So I can understand where that disappointment would have come from for them. As to the accusation that the game is boring, Digimon Survive is a very anime-style game. So those hour-long cutscenes that I was just talking about, they tell a very anime-style story in a very anime-style way. And the game's director has been quite explicit that his goal with it was to create an interactive anime, and he's definitely achieved that. Whether that you get along with that or not depends on your personal interest and tolerance for anime-style stories. And while you could perhaps say that, well, why would you play a Digimon game if that wasn't your interest? There is a reality that tactics RPGs aren't necessarily anime-style stories. I mean, I would hesitate to say that Fire Emblem or Final Fantasy Tactics are that kind of traditional anime approach in storytelling. So if you went into them, if you went into Digimon Survive expecting something like that, what you get might hit you in a way that you find a little bit confusing. And if you're not that invested in it because you're not that interested in that kind of storytelling style, then yes, you're going to find the game to be a little bit dull. So I do understand both sets of criticisms with this game. And I certainly, if you didn't like it, you didn't like it. I'm certainly not suggesting that these people were not valid in not enjoying the game. However, I would like to say that what I like about Digimon Survive is that it does push boundaries and it does something that is very different. And again, as I've talked about over and over and over again on this channel, if you believe that video games are art, then experimentation is a pretty important part of it. And I think perhaps people were surprised that such a valuable property was experimented with. But if you can get over that, if you can push past that and kind of look at this game as an experiment with the Digimon property, there is an awful lot to like about it. And it has a lot of character, it has a lot of charm. It still has the Digimon themselves, and it puts them in a different context that allows different people to perhaps engage with the property and gives you a different look at what Digimon could be. If you don't do that kind of experimentation, you end up stagnating. And Digimon has a particular challenge in that it is very closely compared to Pokemon a lot of the time, which makes it even harder for it because it's really hard to compete with Pokemon. They need to find their own voice, and this is a game that has no close parallel to any Pokemon titles. So I feel like the experimentation was valid and worth doing. And with most people, it seems to have pulled off. Like I said, the general sentiment about this game is that people have enjoyed it. So I feel like the idea was right and they have executed pretty well to it. So in many ways, Digimon Survive actually kind of represents what I would like to see from the video game industry going forward, and that is a commitment to be creative and to experiment with existing properties by taking them and putting them in different contexts, in different genres, and doing different things with them. It does mean that sometimes people won't like what you do, and one of the things that is notable about Digimon Survive is the people who didn't enjoy it tend to be the ones that are Digimon fans, and you just need to accept that that is going to be the case. If you do things differently, some people that liked what you're already doing are not going to like what you've done this time around. But that is not a reason to not be creative. That is not a reason to not try things and experiment. It just means that you need to accept that you're going to get some criticism from some people, and then hopefully on balance people enjoy it, which seems to have been the case with Digimon Survive. So I'm pretty sure the development team will be happy about the response that they've got from this game. They should be. It is a good game. It has been well received. It will be remembered pretty well, I think, amongst the Digimon titles for being that experimental one, but being one that kind of landed with more hits than misses. So anyway, do let me know your own thoughts about Digimon Survive. Did you enjoy it, or were you one of the people that thought it was disappointing? If you were, let me know what you think about it. Let's have a good conversation about it. That is part of the artistic process as well, of course. People should have differences in opinions, and it doesn't mean that anybody's opinions are invalid. If you disagree, it's just an opportunity to have a chat. If you've enjoyed this video, please do hit that like and subscribe button. That way you will get them all as we upload them. And if you do want to support what we do here on digitallydownloaded.net, both across the YouTube channel and the website and the podcast and everything else, then you can back us on Patreon. There's a link in the description below this video. You can do so for $1 a month or more if you're feeling generous, but $1 a month is a buy-in. And in return for supporting us, you actually also get our magazine for free. It's a 56-page magazine that we produce each month on Japanese culture and art and all those kinds of things. So not just video games, but also literature and film and music and travel and tourism and food and all the rest of it. If you're interested in Japan, that magazine is for you and you should enjoy it. All right, thank you very much everybody for tuning in, and we will see you at the next video.